What's up, everyone? Chicago Joe here. My name is Josh, as I told you before. Coming at you with our second video here. Sorry, shameless plug for Modelo. I'm going to crack a cold one for the boys tonight and go over some stuff. Now, last time, my first video, I told you all that I was going to do a Bears video until the entire front office was fired for the Chicago Bulls. And so we ended up doing a Bulls video last time. And I promised you a Bears video this time. I'm going to keep good on that promise, but the Bulls once again did something else, and I don't know if it was their fault or not, but basically bottom line is we're still going to do a Bears video, but I'm going to start switching it up and doing a few headlines because we got a few things we need to talk about, maybe throw some opinions at before we kind of get into the Bears. And currently the Bears are due to be on the clock any minute now for the fourth round, and I've got some opinions of their draft so far, some of their free agency moves, and kind of the outlook going into next season. So we are going to get into that. But starting off, let's get back to the Bulls real quick. So if you'll recap, last time we kind of went over pretty much what their roster makeup was, and what their strategy was with some of these moves that they were making. And my consensus that I left you all with was that I felt like Billy Donovan had been finally given players that were able to keep up with a modern style of offense, and that was kind of the big problem that they had, is they weren't able to modernize their offense or do what they needed to do. So I was a little skeptical of the idea of bringing in a front office and saying, okay, you got to work with Billy Donovan, you got to put your name on the line, but you don't get to pick your own coach. I was skeptical of that, but I was kind of trusting of Billy Donovan and that whole approach, and his ability to adapt his system given the right players. And I think we can all agree the right players and the right strategies from the front office were not in play over the course of his entire tenure. And I'm not sure that it was fair to Billy Donovan. But the recent news, for those of you who haven't heard, if you haven't, I don't know how you haven't, but for those of you who haven't, Billy Donovan did decide to step away and not coach the Bulls anymore. I think this can be looked at from two different angles, and the angle I'm taking is I was kind of excited to see what Billy Donovan could do with a front office who was competent, who wasn't stuck in old ways of how the NBA works, someone who can make a modern system kind of like Oklahoma City has done and is currently doing with, once again being the one seed after winning a title last year with a young core of players who play fast and can shoot threes at a ridiculous rate. So I was excited to see that. I'm kind of sad to see Billy Donovan go. I think he's a good coach. I think he's a great coach. I think if he went back to college, he probably would be able to handle the NIL era, especially since he's had some NBA experience now, and basically NIL has turned NCAA into the NBA. So I think he could do that. I think he could survive other places as long as he's given the right players. But I could also kind of sense that there was a little bit of a sentiment from him where it's just kind of like, I'm done. I don't want to put in that effort anymore. You could tell by the front office or by the Reinsdorf pretty much saying like, hey, if he wants a job, it's his, and we'll make sure whatever front office comes in works with him. And if he wants a job, that was always their quote, and that tells you like they don't know and they weren't really expecting him back. So I don't have any coaching candidates for you. I have seen some names that were not really realistic for front office, but one of the positives we can take out of this is now we can go get a front office of somebody who's reputable, who's going to get their chance to pick a coach, going to get their chance to construct a team with that coach's image. And if there's anything that Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles have taught us, is that pairing a general manager and a front office with a new coach and putting them on that same tact, making sure they come in at the same time so they have that same view of a team and how it needs to be built and coached and managed. I think that's worth its weight in gold. So I'm not gonna say I wanted Billy Donovan to leave, but I'm saying like it's not the worst thing in the world. Now we can get a front office who has that ability to do things their own way and bring in their own people. And now we'll get a coach who we know we're gonna hire a coach now that knows the current NBA system and knows what they need to do to win in the NBA. So I'm a big fan of that. We're going to see how that goes, and we'll keep you abreast of that, but we're not going to talk all day about the Bulls anymore. So the other thing we wanted to talk about is, the Cubs are They're on a 9-game win streak. Right now they're down 3-0 to the Dodgers as I'm making this video. That's very disappointing because, of course, we all know the Dodgers are the gold standard. It really doesn't matter what you do if you can't beat the Dodgers. You're not really playing for a World Series. I mean, Milwaukee proved that last year. You can get as far as you can get, but if you're not going to compete with the Dodgers, you're not competing for a World Series. That's bottom line. That's the world we live in right now with the Dodgers, especially with Kyle Tucker going over there. So, but I don't always put a lot of stock into like opening day and like first week, first month of how a team's doing. But being a lifelong Cubs fan, like I can't tell you how many times I've been optimistic for a team, and then they come out on that opening day game and just completely blow it, and they look awful. And you think, okay, well, that's just one game. Then it turns into a week. Then it turns into a month. And next thing you know, you look back and you're like, I was optimistic for this team, and they weren't very good. And I got a little bit of that inkling after the first week of this Cubs team. I was just looking, I'm like, man, they're not good. Pitching's not good. Like, they can score some runs, and in some instances, they scored a lot of runs, but the pitching just wasn't there. And I was like, oh no, like, is this another one of those years where I'm going to be optimistic, where we feel like we built a team to win, and here we are, and we're not going to win? But 9 games in a row, they've won. I think it's safe to say that this team it's a good team. Like, it's built to compete. They're tied for first with Cincinnati, and yes, it's not even May yet, so we got a long ways to go. But it's very encouraging for me to see them pop up and show that not only is their offense potent, like they got Nico Horner's looking like almost like an MVP candidate right now. Ian Happ is just jacking them out of the park. Suzuki's finally back. As you know, he had that injury in the World Baseball Classic, so he didn't even start the season in the lineup for the Cubs. And then, you got like Ballesteros and Amaya. They're hitting really, really well, and the pitching's starting to come around. As you know, we lost Cade Horton. I don't know how long he's going to be out, but that could be a serious injury and a long-term injury. We will get Justin Steele back probably in the June to July range. Who knows what he's going to look like and how long it's going to take him to get back in the rhythm. That Tommy John surgery is no joke. He might come back and just not gain it back for the rest of this year, and we'll just have to count on him next year. So that's a big boon. But one thing I can tell you about this Cubs team is they built this starting pitching staff to pretty much withstand a nuclear bomb. You could hit that bullpen with a missile, and there'd still be a couple starters that could walk out there and give you serviceable games. And I think they did that on purpose because they saw last year, we had to rely on people like Ben Brown last year. And look, I like Ben Brown. He has games where he looks like an absolute MVP Cy Young candidate, and then he'll come out the next game and give up like 8 runs in 2 innings, and you're just like, what are we doing here? Like, so I do like Ben Brown. I think he's a project, something to work on. But Cabrera's, he's looking every bit worth that trade that we made to solidify our rotation. I like Cabrera. Boyd is looking good. I like to see some more innings out of Boyd, but Boyd's looking good. Tyon still got, he's doing his own thing. And we still got Assad down there coming up and helping us out, and Carlos Reyes still in the mix. So we have plenty of arms. We have plenty of starting pitching, and we can afford to lose some of that. But if we can start solidifying that, this team once again is going to prove they can score runs. And even Bregman's hitting in the low 200s. So if he starts to catch fire at any point, like suddenly you're looking at a team that's going to be nasty. And the Cubs have already proved that they are a defensive as heck team. Like Nico's already made a couple Gold Glove plays this year, and we still got PCA. He's got his new contract, and he promised that means nothing for anything. He's going to take his money and just try to get better, and we know we're going to get some fireworks out of him this year. So I'm very optimistic. I like the way this is going. So we'll continue to keep our eye on that. So the only other headline I have is maybe Blackhawks. Blackhawks said they were committed to getting a deal in place for Connor Bedard. It makes me a little nervous. I love the fact that we have stars that we got to spend a lot of money on, and we'll talk about Caleb Williams in a few minutes. But I love the fact that we have that, but at the same time, I get worried because I remember when Kane and Taves got their money from the Blackhawks, that was kind of the end of it. we never really saw a deep playoff run after that. They deserved every bit of money they got paid. They gave us 3 Stanley Cups, but I mean it's one of those deals where once you start paying those people, it becomes a lot harder to put together a competitive team, and you have to start making some important sacrifices. And we're going to talk about that because the Bears are on the cusp of having to pay Caleb Williams, and he's going to deserve every bit of money he gets, and they're going to have to get creative because, I mean, they've already got cap problems this year, and they brought in a few people that we'll talk about that are not going to help that cap situation, and now you got to go pay Caleb Williams, and that's going to hurt. It's possible, but we're going to have to start building through the draft, and I think Ryan Poles is already kind of testing some strategies for getting guys on a budget instead of just going out and signing the best guy at a position. And those days are going to be over for the Bears pretty quickly. We're going to have to start developing in house, and we'll talk about all this, but so where are we at? So for those of you not following a ton of the Bears, and this is kind of like my tact for this channel is, I want to give new insight for the people who know about all these sports teams and the current happenings. I want to kind of give some analysis, but I also kind of want to give some background for some people who maybe want a quick, like, I need somebody who wants to watch a 30-minute video and get a complete primer of where the Bears are at, or where the Bulls are at, or where this news article, how this situation is gonna affect something. And I kind of want to give that quick primer to kind of like the people who don't necessarily follow this every day, but they don't want to fall out of favor or out of the loop with their team. And so that's kind of my goal. So where are the Bears at? Well, as we all know, the Bears came off that 10-6 season, deep playoff run into the divisional round where, barring some bad play calling and bad plays in that game against the Rams, they were driving down to almost kick a field goal and go play Seattle for a chance of playing the Super Bowl. And I could not have been more ecstatic. That was the season I've been waiting for. I'm going to remember that season for a long time. The 2 comeback wins against Green Bay, all the other comeback wins we had. It's not necessarily the way I want to consistently win for the next decade, but I think it proved to everybody that this Ben Johnson thing is going to work. Caleb Williams can work. He's not just going to be that dud who everyone said was a generational talent and is never going to make it there. So I certainly I think we got that validation that we have something to work with here, and we're just going to keep building on it. So for those of you that don't know, the Bears were in a bad cap situation. I think they were $30 million over the cap going into the free agency, and so they had some holes, they had some places they had to fix, and they had some work to do, but they didn't have the money to do it. Like, they were going to have to cut some casualties and find some money and free up some space just to get under the cap, and that's before you've added anybody. And so we all kind of wondered what was going to happen, but the most widely known one was DJ Moore. So what we did is we traded DJ Moore to the Bills for a second-round pick, and I think we actually got 2 picks out of him, but mostly the second-round pick. And I thought that was a good haul. I thought Buffalo needed that receiver, so they were willing to give up a little bit more for DJ. I hate to lose the number 1 target, the guy who caught the pass against Green Bay. Some people are on DJ for the crappy route he ran against the Rams at the end of the divisional round game that led to the pick that ended up sealing our fate. But at the end of the day, I'd hate to lose DJ Moore, but I think that was the obvious one. He was making a lot of money, and that kind of helped us almost get under the cap right off the bat. Kind of some of the other places, Tremaine Edmonds was another one that we lost, and then we lost a lot of our secondary. We had a lot of guys like Nashawn Wright, who came up and had a great year. He was almost a fill-in for a while, and Kyler Gordon went down, and so he became that guy. And then Tyreek Stevenson, we all know Tyreek is the guy who was taunting the crowd against the Commanders when we gave up that Hail Mary touchdown for the win, and then he came back and completely redeemed himself in great fashion last year and became a very reliable corner. And Nashawn Wright was he was an interception machine last year. Like, nobody expected anything of him, and then he just showed up. And And then we lost Kevin Byard. We couldn't re-sign him, a veteran safety that was basically the anchor of the back part of our defense, and that one hurt me a lot. That veteran leadership was very, very good for us. But an interesting statistic that I saw, and I forgot who posted it, but somebody mentioned a statistics where pretty much every defensive back that we chose not to re-sign in the free agency period, and the only reason we chose not to re-sign any of them is because we didn't have the money, and we didn't have any more money to start paying defensive backs, and so and we still got Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, so we've still got these people who can actually fill in as starters, and these guys were kind of more backup players and contingency plans. So we chose not to re-sign them, but every single one of them got a 1-year deal from the team they went to, including Kevin Byard. He got a 1-year deal from New England, which that blows my mind. Not one of them got a multi-year contract. Not one of them hit the free agency market and someone said, I got to get that guy and we got to lock him up for a few years. That tells you the worth that the NFL was placing on these guys. And Ryan Poles, I think that's one of the best decisions he's made in the offseason, was he looked at all these guys and said, we're going to let them all walk. And some people cringe. They said, okay, there goes our secondary. Are we going to be able to, we're in a division with Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, and Jordan Love. Are we going to be able to stop these guys from passing on us when we play these teams twice each next year? And you look and all of them got 1-year deals, and you can tell these other teams, like, they kind of looked at them the same way. Like, it's a good backup plan if our corner goes down and we need someone to step in. Deshaun Wright's going to be right there. Tyreek Stevenson, put him in there. But I think at the end of the day, it was pretty clear that these guys, they were role players. They were maybe really good backups with a little bit of starter upside and maybe a pinch if you need a guy. But they were not looking to be these guys that were going to be the studs that you anchor defense around. And so I think the goal of this offseason on the defensive side of the ball was get younger. So I'm looking at this. The other curveball that Ryan Poles got was, we all like Drew Dahlman. He came over and quickly became the anchor of the offensive line, was the leader up there, and he was young. He was like 27 or something like that. So he's not very old, and he just up and said, I'm retired. I'm done with football. I'm not doing it anymore. It was a shock to all of us, and so here we are. We're $30 million over the cap. We're already having to get rid of DJ Moore and a bunch of great role players on our defense that helped create turnovers, which basically saved the defense last year. And now we've got a center situation. And so I'm not gonna go too far out of a limb and say the fact that Drew Dahlman retired pretty much sealed our fate when it came to a big name edge rusher, but it really didn't help because that was a locked up position. That was somebody that we didn't have to deal with. We didn't have to think about, and that's an extra. We had to waste a draft pick to go get his replacement, which I think his replacement, and I'm blanking on his name. I apologize. He's the guy from the Patriots, though, and he had such a great statistical year for the Patriots. He was part of the reason that Drake May was able to lead his team to a Super Bowl because he had fantastic protection. So I think we've got a young center, and so I think we're good on that front, but we did have to spend some draft capital to go get him, and that might have been draft capital that either could have been used on somebody else that we needed or a trade for a big-name defensive player that we're looking for. And I know you guys hear me keep harping on defense, and it's kind of weird thinking we have a Ben Johnson coach team and Caleb Williams at quarterback. So I know you guys keep hearing me harp on the defense, but that's where we need the help. I think the offense will be fine next year, even without DJ Moore. We still have Luther Burden and Romo Dunze and two of the best tight ends in the league. So we've got weapons. We still got DeAndre Swift. I think we'll be quite all right. But the defense, so I'm a big fan of Dennis Allen. When I heard that Ben Johnson was coming in and Dennis Allen was, I didn't even hear that Dennis Allen was being considered for the job. I heard that basically Ben Johnson came into the room and said, Dennis Allen's my defensive coordinator if you hire me. And I'm sure that was part of it. And I'm a big fan of former head coaches being in coordinator positions, primarily because Dennis Allen is a lot less likely to just do really well and then leave. I'm a Bears fan. I remember when we got rid of Ron Rivera, Lovie Smith's worst move ever in 2007, and that defense just dive bombed after Ron Rivera left. And then I still remember when Vic Fangio engineered another great defense for the Bears, and suddenly the next year he's off to Denver as the head coach, and he deserved every bit of it. Both of those guys ended up on to be great head coaches, and they had some great runs. And Fangio was never given a team in Denver, and he's back with Philadelphia as a defensive coordinator now, and he helped win a Super Bowl and shut down Patrick Mahomes. So like, he's still as good as he ever was. But so that's why I'm a fan of a guy like Dennis Allen, who's been a head coach. So he knows what it takes to go and be a head coach. And I always looked at the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have Spags coach, and he's a former head coach as well. And his name comes up every year. They're like, man, that Chiefs defense has been, was pretty much the reason behind those 3 Super Bowls. And now everyone's considering him for a head coach position, and he just keeps saying, like, no, like, I've been there before. I don't want to do that. I just want to be a coordinator. I have less to worry about. I just focus on the defense, and I'm good at it, and I'm part of a system. And that's why I think Dennis Allen is great, because maybe he gets the itch someday and says, okay, I've done well in Chicago, and I'm being considered for some roles again for head coaching, but maybe he's just happy being a defensive coordinator in Chicago, and I think he's a great defensive coordinator now. Some people will beat me up over that. I remember the first game last year, J.J. McCarthy looked like an MVP. Like, Minnesota thought they had their quarterback of the future because he just lit the Bears up in that second half, and then we went to Detroit, and Detroit just walked all over us. That was a former Ben Johnson offense that was just completely tearing us apart. And the defense got better over the year, but they were kind of saved by a lot of turnovers. They created a lot of turnovers, and that's great. That's a definition of a good defense. Like, I'm not dogging them for that, but I'd rather have the defense like Seattle or New England's this past year, where they were just stout. Yeah, they got turnovers, but for the most part, they're just going to 3 and out you all day. And there wasn't a lot of that from these Dennis Allen defenses last year in these games. Like, we got into a lot of shootouts that we probably could have avoided. And so I like Dennis Allen. I thought he did a great job with the defense last year, but improvements were needed and are still needed to kind of give him some help, because we can't just rely on getting picks next year, especially because some of the guys who got most of our picks last year are gone now. And we've done some upgrades, and we'll talk about those too. And then the offensive side, I think we're good. We did lose Eric Bieniemy, our running back coach. That one hurts. Bieniemy should have been a head coach in this league by now, but he ruffles feathers. He's rough around the edges. He's not a people pleaser or a people person. He's like, I know my stuff. I'm coming in. I'm sure Kansas City ran him out, and now he's come back all full circle. But the job he did with DeAndre Swift and the running back room last year, like, that's just unbelievable. And so we did get Eric Studzville. He came from Mike McDaniels in that Miami offense, and one of his specialties was a running back by committee approach. Not just necessarily having one, but the Bears have 3, one serviceable and 2 pretty good running backs. So I look at this situation as like, if there's anybody that was good for this role, another great hire by Ben Johnson, kind of like the Al Harris to coach defensive backs, stuff like that. Like, this is another great hire. This is another great place where we're going to have a really good fit for what we're doing on the offensive side of the ball. So I do want to go through some of the draft picks here, and I am going to pull up these picks because I want to make sure I give all of them credit. But so bear with me here a second. Bears NFL draft. I remember all the big ones, but I want to go through some of these, and I'm also going to have another tab where I found some cool scouting reports on some of these guys, and so I kind of want to read off some of these scouting reports that I found. Bleacher Report did a really good report on a lot of these guys. So going into the draft, I think that general consensus was, the Bears were in these talks for the Max Crosby and all these other big name edge rusher talks, and we saw the price tag for that, and they did their due diligence. Ryan Poles made the phone calls, but I wasn't really sure that we were ever going to do that, and we didn't have the cap space to pull off a big name edge rusher to go alongside Montez Sweat. So I also do want to go over some of our free agency additions, and actually I'm going to do that first because some of these are big, but so I'm going to go back to where I was. I apologize for the skipping around here, but let's go back up to, I pulled all this up. So Garrett Bradbury was the center we picked up from the Patriots, so I was a big fan of that. That's going to end up being a good long-time expected starter at center. So we got the not-so-black mamba, Kobe Bryant, coming in. He came in from the Seahawks at safety. He's going to be our Kevin Byard replacement. What do I think as far as is that an upgrade or a downgrade? I think it's about the same. Byard's going to give you that veteran experience, but there's some indication that he was not covering the same distance that he was able to in his younger years. He's getting a little bit older. Speed and covering distances is everything in when you get to that safety position. So I think Kobe Bryant is going to give you that younger, more athletic, more energetic look. He's a ball hawk. That's a big thing for the safeties and Dennis Allen defense. So I think it's an upgrade, but he also comes with a $13.3 million cap hit. I could easily see him being a cap casualty when we have to give a new contract to Caleb Williams and start deciding who we need to cut and who we need to keep. So that's a thing. We also got rid of Tremaine Edmonds, as I said. We brought in Devin Bush. I think Devin Bush is a big upgrade. He's not only is he a former Dennis Allen person, so he knows the system, but he's got a little bit better stats than Edmonds, but he's also more of a ball hawk. He's also fits the system more. He's a lot faster. He's going to have a lot more speed. His ability to close out gaps and close out in the coverage is that's going to fit a lot better in the Dennis Allen defense. And I wonder if Tremaine Edmonds, I thought he was a cap casualty at first, and I think that was part of it, but I also think that he could have been very much not necessarily the scheme fit they were looking for. He was one of those holdovers from the 3-4 Vic Fangio days, and now we're in the 4-3 system. So I think they need a running back who can do a little bit more than just kind of be that figurehead who can kind of play that one tight little area. You want to have a little bit more range if you're only going to have 3 linebackers on the field, and Devin Bush is that guy. So I think that's a great upgrade. We did go and get Khalif Raymond. He's a wide receiver / kick returner, more of a return specialist. He was with the Lions. He knows Ben Johnson really well. I think that could end up being a good kick return option, maybe a fast wide receiver. It's not a DJ Moore replacement, not by any means. If you're going to do a one-on-one comparison, that's not happening. We also got Jedrick Willis Jr. He's going to come in and compete for the left tackle spot with Ozzie Trapillo, as well as Braxton Jones. I think we still have Braxton on the team. So that's going to be kind of an interesting, that position is still kind of being contested. And so it tells you that, Darnell Wright on the other side is solidified, and the rest of our line's pretty much solidified, that left tackle position is open, and we brought somebody in to compete to see, who can win it. We also brought in Neville Gallimore on the defensive tackle front. He's an interior rotational guy, pretty much our new Andrew Billings. And I don't think he's going to provide a whole lot other than just a little bit of depth. And then kind of an interesting move is we went and got Case Keenum, and that kind of made a lot of people interested because, we all know Tyson Bagent is our backup quarterback, and he's as good of a backup as you get. I know he can come in and run that Ben Johnson system. He's a workhorse. He's got fantastic athletic ability. He's a CrossFit dude. He's just ridiculously in shape, and he lives and breathes anything that just sits at home and watching film and kind of just being that dude who does football all day long. And so I like Tyson a lot, but people were wondering why we re-signed Case Keenum as a backup quarterback, and they're wondering, is it time, instead of paying Tyson all that money, is it time we trade him and try to get some picks out of it, and then we have Case Keenum as a backup? We don't know. It sounds like they might be keeping 3 on the team, but I don't really know if there was a move there or if that was just kind of their MO is to sign a third quarterback. So those are kind of our notable offseason additions. Notably absent is an edge rusher. And so we all know we have an edge rusher, and we also have another kind of safety position and maybe another defensive back, and then I'd like to see a running back and a wide receiver. So we're going to start going through the draft picks because we're here on draft night. So round one, number 25, we went with Dylan Thieneman from safety from Oregon. He was with Purdue a while, but transferred over. This guy is a safety of the future. I think he's an immediate starter alongside Kobe Bryant, and I think that's a pretty scary safety set to have in that back, hawking balls. I still contend that the 4-3 system Dennis Allen runs, you have to get pressure with those front four. Those are what cause quarterbacks to panic, maybe make quicker reads, and now your safeties. I look back to like the Eddie Jackson days where I'm like, he wasn't good when we weren't getting pressure, but when we were getting pressure, that gave him a chance to undercut routes. But Dylan Thieneman, he's a ball hawk. I did look up to see, because he looks like a tough guy. Like when he was walking down the aisle after he, picked up his Bears hat, and he looked like a tough guy. And I'm like, okay, is he a thug? Is he going to come and hit some people and light some people up? And kind of what I think his like whole deal is he's not afraid to come up in the box and hit. And in the Big Ten, you have to do that. You got big boys playing in Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan, like Wisconsin. You got big boys playing there, and you got to come up and be able to hit. And so I think he's that guy. He's not afraid to come up and play in the box. He can play very, very well in the mid-range, and he's a ball hawk in the back. And so he's a very versatile safety. He's very fast. He ran almost a faster 40 than likes of Justin Jefferson and some other wide receivers. Like, this guy is fast. I did look up, though, is he a thumper? And they said pretty much no, he's not a thumper. He's not going to come knock you out. He's not like a John Lynch-style safety. But one thing they referred to him is his hitting is violent. So he might not be a thumper. He might not be as big of a guy to come lay a hit on you. But he's also a huge fan and almost a student of Troy Polamalu, which I've seen Troy Polamalu. I'd almost call him a thumper. So I don't know if I agree with it. He's not a thumper. I think this guy's going to come up and hit you and then go pick the ball off. And I think that's his style. So I was hoping for an edge in the first round. But I did see a couple edges go right before the Bears picked, and I would assume that those couple guys were on their radar and probably would have been picked if they were available. But we know Ryan Poles, his whole strategy is best available. He's not picking based on needs. He's not going to reach on somebody just because he needs that edge rusher. That's not the way he does it. So he looked at Thieneman and said, yeah, we need a safety, and who knows if we keep Kobe Bryant after his contract's up, because we got to pay Caleb and $13.3 million a year for a safety. Might be a little out of our range. So I think that was a good pickup. I think that was a more best available pickup than it was like, this is our absolute top need. Round 2, we went with Logan Jones from Iowa. Excuse me. I have some mixed feelings about Logan Jones. Like, I think he can be good. I think he's more of a project, which is fine because Garrett Bradbury's young, and I think he could potentially be our center for the future. So I think we went out and got a backup center in the second round. I don't know if this is the place to do it, but Ryan Poles was a lineman, and he's had a pretty good tenure for picking linemen. Like, he picked Darnell Wright. He's kind of fixed the line with Tevin Jenkins, and Drew Dahlman was good until he decided to retire. So the only whiff he had was Nate Davis. I think that was more Nate Davis' problem though than it was Ryan Poles. But I don't know about Logan Jones. He's a little small, a little undersized. The scouting report on him pretty much says like he can be lifted, he can be pushed back, like overpowered. Green Bay and Detroit both have some big boys down in coming over that center. So I don't know if this guy's gonna fit, but maybe he's more of a project. I don't see him being a second rounder though, like at number 57. Like I just can't imagine that was best available. They must have really thought they needed a center for some reason. So I'm not a big fan of this pick. I'm going to say that much. Maybe Logan Jones next round if he was available in the third. I don't know. There's just way too much. And that's a guy that we trade DJ Moore for. Like, to me, that's just not a good use of your resources. So we go down to round 3, and we took Sam Roosh, the tight end from Stanford. Now, Stanford has a long history of very good tight ends. And this guy is definitely a Ben Johnson type tight end. So I know that Ben Johnson's sitting in that room and working with Ryan Poles saying, hey, this is what I need. I'm just curious why we're taking a third round pick now on a tight end that is clearly going to be a third stringer. There's no way Cole Kmet or Colson Loveland are going to take a backseat to this guy. And, how many tight ends does Ben Johnson need before you start to say, hey, like, you got other needs on this team. It's time to start. But I think Sam Rush, he's pretty good. He has some vertical speed. He can get some separation, but he also has kind of short arms. He's not really out there. There's some route running issues, and I mean his blocking. He can get beat off the line pretty easily. So he's a third string tight end, and for a third round pick, I it's once again one of those like I'm if this is a Ben Johnson pick where he just turned the polls and said get me a tight end for a third stringer, I'd say let him cook. But I mean, if we're starting to reach for tight ends, which I think this guy might have even fallen back more, we might have been able to snag him with our next pick. And then we go down to we had another round 3 pick, and that was Xavier Thomas from LSU. Now I like this pick. This dude is fast. He had the fastest 40 time of anybody in the combine this year. He's essentially going to be. It looks like they're going to make Luther Burden the number 2, which is pretty much an obvious. I always thought Burden was kind of a slot receiver, but maybe he's the number 2. He's that speedster that can go on the opposite end of the field, kind of spread that defense out and make sure they got to worry about Rome Odunze and Burden now. But then you put the Xavier in there, and Xavier could easily be a kick returner. Like I know we signed Khalif, but this guy could easily be your kick returner, that speedy dude. But he's also kind of a jet sweep type guy, a screen pass, quick little drag route over the middle, just kind of dump it to him. Luther Burden played that role very well last year. If you watch some of their games where he would just do those quick little routes, he'd just dump it to him and then just let him juke. And that's what this guy is. I like this pick. This is a good pick. I don't like the strategy of picking a wide receiver here. I thought maybe we could have picked this guy in the last pick and just skipped the tight end and gone with defense in this, but I'm not the GM. I'm not going to criticize them. They've done a good job. I'm a Ryan Poles fan. Of course, I'm a Ben Johnson fan, but man, this is a good pick. I just don't know if this. I don't know if this is the right spot where we needed that, but I'm glad we got him. So, we got a 4th, 5th, and 2 7ths left. We still don't have another edge rusher. I don't know what the plan is. Like it was clear last year that we didn't have that edge rusher to go opposite Montez Sweat. I mean, Montez had trouble. He was double teamed all year long. I know we've had some upgrades. They even looked at Dexter when he became available from the Giants, but the price tag was too steep. But my thing going forward here is like I don't see a pick here where we can take an edge rusher and really make a difference in our strategy. So I'm also wondering if, did we pick a tight end that's got a Ben Johnson fingerprint all over it? Did we do that because maybe we're thinking we don't need 3 first-round tight ends? Is that are we thinking we're going to trade someone? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to raise a conspiracy and speculate, but I am going to say that it's kind of like, if anyone's seen the movie Major League, like when Jake Taylor walks in and says, I think keeping 3 catchers on the roster is a great idea. Like I like the idea of 3 tight ends, but maybe we've come to a point here where maybe like a Cole Kmet, he's making a lot of money. Maybe if Colson Loveland, he proved last year he can be just as good as Cole. And I like Cole Kmet. I don't want to get rid of any of them, but maybe Cole Kmet's kind of trade bait now. Get some of that cap space back, trade him and maybe a first-round pick and see what you can get at an edge rusher to come in from the other side. I don't know if there's a play here, but it sure seemed to me like there might be a little strategy, a little forward thinking that we don't even know anything about right now. And so we're going to see what happens, but I don't see a 4th, a 5th, or 2 7th-round picks being an edge rusher who's going to change the needle at all on the defensive line. And I still think we have a need at defensive line. Like, that is arguably the weakest spot in our team right now. And if we can't figure out how to get those guys past the offensive line and get some pressure on a quarterback, we're going to have the Jordan Loves. We're going to have the whoever it may be, the Jared Goffs, the Kyler Murrays. They're going to be back there just picking us apart. And we have a great secondary, and our linebacking core is going to be pretty dang good next year. But man, if we can't get that pressure, that's a death sentence in the 4-3 defense. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. We're still waiting on this fourth round pick to come in, so we'll update you guys. I didn't feel the need to wait until all these other picks because they're really not going to move the needle all that much. But we'll do an update later on, and maybe if some crazy trade happens where we trade away 2 or 3 of these picks plus Cole Kmet for an edge rusher, like we'll do an update on that. And we'll talk about it, and I'll give you my opinion. But for now, I'm very optimistic. I'm very excited for another Bear season. Let's go. Let's bear down. Let's have another season. I'm so ready for some more good, better, best videos that day after a win. Watching the locker room go crazy. Ben Johnson ripping his shirt off. Like, let's go. I'm all for more of that. So, absolutely, 100%. Let's go. I'm letting Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson cook right now, and this is the first draft where there's been some decisions where usually I get angry about this and be like, yep, here comes another year of not. But this is the first time where I'm like, hey, like whatever they're doing, I'm going to let them keep doing it because I could see us winning the division again next year. And I really want to see that again. So that's all I have for you guys tonight. I'll probably try to be back next week and we'll give you some more updates on some of the news headlines. And then I'd like to do kind of a deep dive on either the Cubs or the Blackhawks. I don't know the Blackhawks roster as well because they're still all pretty young, but I do have some opinions about, like, I think it's time for them to start going. It's time for them to start kicking into gear. Like, this rebuild has happened. They've got a lot of young talent. This team is stacked with young talent who is ready to explode. Some of them ready to hit their primes. Like, this could be an exciting time for the Blackhawks, but they got to start doing it. Like, it's one thing to always have that promise of, yeah, we're rebuilding, but it's another thing to actually make that jump and start doing that. And they flirted with that. They were a decent team. They beat some good teams earlier this year, but overall the consistency wasn't there. I'm also sure pretty soon we're going to have some Bulls headlines with a new front office and maybe a new head coach and maybe a new vision for the future of the team. So we'll talk about that. And then I do also want to do a deep dive on the Cubs. And like I told you, I have some stuff like NIL, and I do want to do a UFC video just to kind of reach some people that may not be Chicago specific, but I'm a big UFC fan, so we can do one of those, talk about the state of it and the Paramount deal and stuff like that. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like and hit a subscribe for me, and we'll keep bringing you stuff. Please, if you have anything in the comments, let me know. I'd love to answer some of your questions and address some things. If you have topics, if you have things you want to talk about, let's do it. I do plan on doing some of these live at some point, and we will start doing those once I get some followers and some stuff going on. But other than that, I hope everyone's great. Chicago Joe signing off. Thanks.